Joining us now, Congressman, Republican, 7th District of Virginia. That's the Central Virginia area. Dave Brat. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Hey, great to be on, John. And I just do want to start off by telling your listeners, your track record is for real. It's the real deal. And you didn't call them at the last minute, and you called some whoppers. And so I just want to give you a call out on that.
Well, thank you, Dave, including Dave Brat.
Yeah, no, I know. And when no one thought I could,
you
knew it ahead of time.
When we went to that rally you had on a Tuesday night where you had 650 people 10 days out, and then I got John McLaughlin, who's a friend of mine, sent a poll out that said you were losing to Eric Cantor by 33. I just knew the whole thing was baloney because you got 650 people out on a Tuesday night, right? At a golf club.
No, it was Laura Ingram. Yeah, it was packed through the rafters. We're expecting 100 or 200 people. Just
650. Yeah, I went to that, and I'll never forget, Andy and I went. Andy was with the company at the time, and we had to park our vehicle like 20 blocks away. I mean, it was like there was nowhere to park, and we're like, what the hell's going on? So I knew it then. Let's get to Trump's tax plan. Now, the Democrats are calling this a tax cut for the rich. Either they're looking at something I'm not, or they're completely making it up, because if you earn over $1 million, your tax rate stays the same at 39.6%, coupled with the fact that all the loopholes go away, so you're going to actually pay more. And then thirdly, there is what they call a balloon tax for people making over $1 million that says that the revenue benefit you're going to get from the original $100,000 you made, that's an extra tax that goes in. So if you're making over $1 million, you get no benefit whatsoever. What are the Democrats talking about?
Yeah, well, you just hit the nail on the head. They're reporting both stories at the same time. They go in the opposite direction. But the reason is it's just because of the way the tax system works, right? If you're a millionaire and you report your income, you do get every bracket going all the way up, right? So you get the 12% tax reduction, you get the 25% tax reduction, you get the 35% tax reduction. It's just the nature of the beast. So we're not lowering their rate, and a lot of Republicans are uncomfortable with that. I mean, we don't believe in this class warfare business, right? This negativity going across the country comes straight out of Karl Marx, right, who had no problem labeling capitalists are evil people. Mm-hmm. Workers are good people, and owners of business are bad. And that we just don't like that logic. We want everyone to be successful. We don't want to discriminate against anybody. And so what the press won't tell you is that the Democrat tax plan, they had a progressive budget they put out a couple weeks back, raised taxes $10 trillion. Raise spending $11 trillion and has bigger debt and deficits than ours do. Mm-hmm. And so when they say, well, you guys don't care about the deficit, I say, have you looked at the Democrat plan? And they don't even know. And these are, I hate to tell you because you're going to start laughing, but these are news reporters, right? All they're doing is opinion pieces. They're not doing any news reporting whatsoever.
Well, look, I mean, that is one of the problems we have in our industry. But to call this tax plan that came out of the House Ways and Means Committee a tax cut for the rich is just a total lie, because there's no tax breaks for anybody making over $1 million. In fact, they're going to pay more. So, I mean, some conservatives are upset about that. So the thing is ridiculous. Now, I want to get to repatriation, because we had a White House briefing on Friday with Gary Cohn, and I was trying to understand this. But the way they did repatriation, and I want your view as an economist, is rather than giving what I thought they would do, which is a period of time where you get to take that money back in the United States at a much lower tax or without a tax, they did the opposite. I thought this was interesting. They said, regardless of where you park your money as a company, you're going to pay 5 or 12% if you take it home or not. If you made the money in France and you keep your liquid cash in a bank in France, you're going to be taxed in the U.S. 12% if you're a U.S. company. It's not like they said, take it back and you aren't going to pay anything until 2018. 2018, they said we're going to start taxing it retroactively now. And so in a 10-year period, so if you've got $1 billion in assets, you've got to put $120 million on your balance sheet as a liability because that's what you owe the government. So it's kind of the opposite what I thought it would be. But the way Gary Cohn explained it, he said, what this does is that gives no incentive for U.S. companies to keep their money overseas, and then they can move it wherever they want. What did you make of that?
Yeah, no, and I'm still unpacking that myself, and it gets so complex that there are some new pieces moving around in there, but you nailed it right there. And so the incentive is still to get the money back here.
Right.
And then they need to fund it, right? So I think that's part of the reason they went this route, that you get taxed either way, because I thought we were going to raise a lot more than we are, but we're only going to get about $250 billion in tax revenues. But even that's huge. That's 10% of $2.5 trillion.
Right.
So that we're getting $250 billion, and that is going to be used to pay for moving toward this territorial system,
right,
which levels the playing field and makes it fair for Americans again. So the good news is we're moving toward that type of logic and system, which Trump had wanted all the way along.
Right.
But the bad news is we don't get as much of a tax break in the immediate term, back in our wallets. We got to use some of that to pay for that new international system.
Congressman, big tax break for middle class. If you're making $60,000 with a family of four, you're going to save about $1,200 or $100 a month. If you're making $90,000 with a family of four and you're taking the straight deduction, you're going to save about $250 a month. How does this spur economic growth?
Yeah, well, that's good. And by the way, that I walked out of our meeting last week, 20 press people in front of me. I go on the press every day, and they said, this is not a middle-class tax cut. And then I held up what you just said. I held up a sheet of paper with our evidence. I said, family of four, average family income in Virginia is $60,000. They get $1,200 back. And they just go on to prosecute. Is that the median or the mean? Or they're trying to get out of it. I said, doesn't matter. Family of four, average income gets $1,200 back. That's the middle class. I said, game over, right? Then on the economic growth front, just so people understand, this is a little complex, right? But we, like the health care debate, we had to pass it through the Senate, and you got all these crazy rules over there. So we had to accept their rules to adopt a $1.5 trillion deficit up front in order to get it through the Senate. And that involved, we could not use what's called dynamic scoring. And so our assumption of economic growth in this budget is about 0.3% per year for the next 10 years. And so right now the economy grew at 3%, 10 times that level last time, and 3% this year, this quarter. And right now, if you go to the Atlanta Fed, they have and they're very good data, right? That's the best data in the country. They have an app called GDP Now. Based on current consumption and spending, we're growing at 4.6% right now this quarter. Mm-hmm. So that's just tremendously good news. It's 10 times the amount of how we're allowed to score it. So the left, of course, wants to tell the worst story possible, right? So they say, well, your budget, you have a $1.5 trillion deficit over 10 years. And that's true according to Washington, budgetary lingo, but it's not true in the real world. And people know I don't fudge, right? If I don't like our leadership plan on healthcare, I voted no.
Right.
And on this one, I just tell the facts the way they are on paper. I just cited a ton of them. And so the economic growth forecast, if you increase GDP by 1%, you get about $1 trillion more in your revenues, in government revenues, and that will pay for the tax cuts right there. And I honestly do believe, if I had to bet, like you and I on the elections or whatever, you make your forecast, right? If I had to bet and it was my own money, I would say, yes, we're going to clear 3%. And we're going to pay for these tax cuts over 10 years.
Well, because you pay for the tax cuts by lowering the taxes, lowering the corporate tax rate to 20%, doing what they did on repatriation so that people spend more money in the economy grows, they have more money in their pocket. Also, when you lower the corporate tax to 20%, this idea that all this money is just going back to shareholders is ridiculous, because if your tax rate goes down from 35% to 20%, and you simply take that windfall and you just give it to your shareholders, and you don't invest, create jobs, do things of that nature, then you're going to invite competition who are going to be able to do things better and cheaper because they're paying a real 20% tax rate while the other company is simply giving a windfall back. That isn't the way it works. So that's going to create tremendous job growth. It's going to put upward pressure on wages because now people are competing for jobs. And so the economy is going to grow. And the way you grow out of the deficit is more people have jobs paying taxes that were not. More companies are created. They're paying taxes. So expand the pie, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And if you look at why are rich countries rich, it's because your people work with capital. And so we're doing a huge chunk. We're doing C Corp rate, like you said, the S Corp for small business, and then immediate expensing is a big chunk, right? And so that the market is already relying on this, right? They're assuming we're going to pass this thing. And so people are already starting to do business investment. Mm-hmm. And most of this is just positive psychology. And this goes, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. John Maynard Keynes talked about the animal spirits. And the animal spirits are moving right now. Consumer sentiment, you can measure it, right? University of Michigan has an index on consumer sentiment and then consumer expectations looking forward. They're both at all-time highs going back to 2000, right? 17-year highs in consumer attitudes about moving forward. And if that, the real miracle here of economic growth is if it hits the kids, mm-hmm. right? The kids are being told business is bad, your career outlook is bad, everything's bad. If we can turn them around to get to be pro-entrepreneurial and be pumped up about business, right, and to go to school and say, hey, show me how to write a resume. I want to get in this thing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, what a turnaround for this country. It would just be phenomenal.
Absolutely. The 20% corporate tax rate, even President Obama said our corporate tax rate was too high. We were too uncompetitive. We have the highest corporate taxes in the free world. It's driving our money out of the United States and it's curtailing growth. So I think if you put this together, along with the president's breathtaking initiatives to deregulate the economy and to get our jobs back and to get rid of these visa cheap labor scam programs, I think you're going to see economic growth in the 4% area, which is going to be unprecedented. I mean, that's Reagan-esque. Dave, we're out of time. I want to thank Dave Brat for being with us. More information, go to davebrat.com.